It finally happened. Alexander Isak got his big move.
Liverpool and Newcastle have agreed a British record transfer fee for Alexander Isak.
But the cost it comes at is huge. This transfer has once again exposed an issue that's becoming even worse in the game. Isak won, but football is losing. Suddenly, clubs and fans no longer have the power they used to, not because they lost it, but because players are getting stronger. It's a sad reality, but it's the truth. Alexander Isak to Liverpool move, the Premier League record transfer fee, it changes everything. To really understand, we need to remember exactly what happened.
Alexander Isak.
Alexander Isak.
Alexander Isak.
It was a saga that dominated the transfer talk in the Premier League this summer. Liverpool developed an interest in Isak, and it became public news soon. We'll get to how this and the guys involved also contributed to ruining everything, but focusing on Isak, after the news broke out about Liverpool's reported bid, suddenly everything changed. He was no longer the Isak Newcastle fans knew. It progressed into a very ugly series of events. It went from Isak refusing to train with the club to faking an injury, getting a scan, refusing to link up with the rest of his teammates for pre-season, training on his own, forcing the move, and then the post that added more flames to an ever-increasing fireball. He chose not to attend the PFA Awards ceremony a few weeks back, which would have been okay. Only thing is, he made his reason for not attending the ceremony public with that Instagram story post. At that point, even if the club was trying to curtail the situation, it was out in the open. Newcastle and Isak were at war. Someone would have to give.
Wants to go to a club like Liverpool who are going to be challenging and winning trophies again, but at the end of the day, I think the way he's gone about it is all wrong. And I'll name two players that...
This, unfortunately, was Newcastle's reality. How do you keep a guy who's made it clear he doesn't want to play for the club again? So in the end, they had to lose their ground. Newcastle sold Isak to Liverpool for £125 million, a British record fee. But what went down just shows the ugly growing side of the game now. Players are becoming even more dangerous. It wasn't just Isak this summer. Over at Arsenal, the club's headline signing did the same thing. Victor Gyökeres and Sporting Lisbon were at war a couple of weeks back in the summer. It was almost the same situation. Sporting Lisbon reportedly weren't satisfied with the fee Arsenal submitted for Gyökeres. They wanted more because that's what they valued Gyökeres at. The debate between both clubs continued, but the trigger? Gyökeres refused to train with the club. He went on a self-imposed holiday and, just like Isak, he also made his feelings publicly known. Truth is, this is bad. But you know what makes this even worse? It's that both clubs had the option to make it even worse but chose not to. Both Isak and Gyökeres still had 3 years left on their respective contracts. 3 years. That's a lot. It would have been easy for Newcastle and Sporting Lisbon to refuse any transfer bids and allow the careers of the two players to waste away. But instead, they chose to sell to put an end to the saga. Now, this isn't to say the clubs were completely innocent of the messy situation in both deals. The stance both Isak and Gyökeres took was that they had gentlemen's agreements with both clubs over when they could move and how they could move clubs, and that the clubs decided to back down on it. But the point is that the way they handled the situation was wrong. With Isak it was bad, Gyökeres the same. And yet again, it wasn't just these two. To show that it's becoming an emerging trend, it happened involving Newcastle again. Only this time they were on the other side.
We've got breaking news from Newcastle. Mark McAdam.
Yeah, hugely exciting breaking news because Newcastle fans know how to celebrate. They can start to celebrate now because Wissa is a Newcastle United player. We're just waiting for official confirmation from the club.
Wissa completed a deadline day move to Newcastle, but before that it was a lot. Just like Isak and Gyökeres, Wissa also had a similar problem. He had the same gentleman's agreement with the club that he could leave if they met favourable terms. Newcastle had interest in him, all good. Things turned ugly when suddenly they weren't as good. So what really happened? Well, Brentford had sold their star man Bryan Mbeumo to Man United, weakening the attack. It made sense to see why they didn't want Wissa to leave, at least until they could get a replacement. What didn't make sense was Wissa's decision not to play for the club. Heck, on social media, Wissa even took it a step further. He deleted every Brentford-related post on his bio. When he finally posted his goodbye video to the club, it wasn't even a thank you, it was a message. He disabled the comments too. Now you can see the pattern emerging. Let's throw it back to Isak to try and understand Newcastle's position. They had a horror show in the transfer window. Even before any rumours of Isak leaving, the club was already actively looking for new names in the market. Each target they had rejected them. Bryan Mbeumo was linked to the club. He joined Manchester United. Benjamin Šeško was linked to the club, but he also joined Man United. Matheus Cunha was linked to the club. He joined Man United. João Pedro was linked to the club. He joined Chelsea. Mohamed Kudus was linked to the club. He joined Spurs. And the last one, look away if you're a Newcastle supporter, Ugo Ekitike, also linked to the club. He joined Liverpool, the same club Isak was sold to on deadline day. The point here is that the club was already in a difficult position, which was clear to the public. They didn't have enough options in the number 9 position. Isak was the only main player. Callum Wilson left the club that summer. It would have made more sense for the club to sign a replacement before at least considering selling him, which is what they did after signing Nick Woltemade and Johan Wissa, before allowing Isak to join Liverpool, but it turned ugly, and it turned ugly fast. Right, so now we understand the situation and everything that happened. What does this mean for football?
Well, I think what we've seen in this transfer window, not that it's any news to us, is that if you throw the toys out the pram, if you kick and scream, if you disobey club rules and regulations and contracts, you're getting what you want, pretty much. Johan Wissa, Gyökeres did it at Sporting to an extent, and the owner at Sporting got irate with both him and Arsenal. Alexander Isak has done it, and he's got what he wants. So there's a bit of player power in there. Yes, money talks. Of course it does, and Liverpool have paid.
Couldn't sum it up any better. Unfortunately, that's the new reality for players now. Need a move away, even though you still have years left on your contract?
What does it mean for you to
just do what Isak, Gyökeres and Mbeumo have done? Throw the toys out of the pram. Put a foot down and refuse to play for the club. Throw a tantrum. Act like the fans don't care anymore. Do all of that and you'll get your move away. And this right here is the unfortunate new reality of football now. The sad part is what it does to the club and to the fans. It weakens them. To the club and the owners, in the end, it's a business. Just like the Isak saga, there would have been no point keeping a player who doesn't want to play for the club anymore. They could have taken the case to court, but at what cost?
There's obviously still the ongoing saga with Alexander Isak. How do you hope this is resolved in the coming days or weeks?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer. I hope it's resolved quickly, because it's sort of news around us all the time rather than focusing on what we need to do on the pitch and all the things that go into a performance today. Then players manage to shut that out and just perform, and we've done that consistently, so we're going to have to continue to do that, and we could do without the narrative against us, but what will be will be.
This was Eddie Howe every time the case was brought up in the media. He openly had to talk about how distracting it was for him and the team. The fact that no one focused on the team's performances on the pitch anymore, and at the time all anyone could talk about was Isak. Simply Isak. In the same light, it also reveals another thing about the game now. There's no loyalty in football. This one affects both the players and the clubs. Again, using the Isak incident as the case study, there's a possibility that none of this would have happened if Newcastle hadn't kick-started the domino effect that made him want to leave in the first place. The rumours suggest that in April 2024, Amanda Staveley, Newcastle United's former minority owner, informed Isak that he'd get an upgrade on his £140,000 a week contract at the club. It seemed fair given the goals he was scoring and what the club wanted to achieve with him. But just 2 months later, she was kicked out after an internal power struggle with the Saudis. Newcastle appointed a new sporting director in Paul Mitchell, and in turn, he didn't think it would be a good idea to improve Isak's wage deal at the time. Seeing it like this, it then becomes easier to understand Isak's position. He chose not to be loyal and forced the move away from the club, because in turn they'd done the same to him after he was expecting a new contract and it got turned down. It's the same with the Johan Wissa situation. He had the agreement that he'd be able to leave for, and with all due respect, a bigger club than Brentford fighting to play Champions League football. In his case, Wissa did train with the team, but he made it clear he wasn't going to play for them. Again, can't blame him. They knocked off the agreement and he decided to knock off theirs. The crazy thing about all of this is that because it happened now, it doesn't mean it can't happen again. Let's be real. Isak chose not to play for Newcastle after the whole saga and signed a 6-year deal to play for Liverpool. Who's to say the same won't happen at Liverpool if a club like Real Madrid or Barcelona comes calling for him in a couple of years? The loyalty in the game is gone, and it's because of incidents like this and the other means players can use.
Alexander Isak to Liverpool. Here we go.
This guy, Fabrizio Romano, he's part of the bigger picture. Player agents, news outlets, reporters and journalists spreading news about the club. The truth is, what it does is create a tense atmosphere that ultimately backfires at the club. Newcastle didn't want to sell Isak. After guys like Fabrizio had reported Liverpool's interest in him, and even the fee they wanted to offer that becomes almost impossible. Because of them, suddenly everyone knows the details about the transfer. There's no chance to be discreet or sort things out in the background. When they leak news about agents meeting the club, about the club attempting to renegotiate in a private function or a location, it's all just a public spectacle everyone is waiting to see end. And then there's the saddest reality.
Conducted themselves fantastically well. Still seems a fan's favourite with the supporters and the manager speaking really highly of him as well. And he'll probably have to wait maybe till January now or next summer to get that move on, and maybe other players in this position in a year's time will be looking at how Isak and Wissa have gone about it and maybe feel that gives them the greater opportunity to get out, and that would be a sad day for football really, because I don't think it's been great the way both players have conducted themselves. And
imagine being Mark Gahey. Imagine being the guy who decided to be an example instead of being a bad guy. Unlike the likes of Isak and Wissa, Gahey chose to allow things to play out. Liverpool had been interested in him long before the rumours of Isak even became public. Gahey didn't force a move. He didn't put out a public statement saying he won't play for the club again. He chose to keep things professional. He played for Palace in pre-season, played in the Community Shield, and even scored in what he thought would be his last game for the club against Aston Villa. There were rumours about Gahey already saying goodbye to his teammates and preparing a thank you video to the club. Imagine being him and the awkward situation he'd faced at the club, knowing the deal broke down at the last minute. The harsh truth that nobody might want to agree with? If Gahey had forced a move like Isak and Gyökeres did, Mark Gahey would most likely be a Liverpool player by now. The deal got cancelled after Palace refused to let him leave because they couldn't find a replacement at the last minute. It's now become a case where the bad guys who force their way win, and the good guys like Gahey, they regret it. It's tough now. Players know what they want, and it's become a situation where they force what they want until they get it. For fans, the player you think you're falling in love with at the club might be the one to hit the team when it hurts. Take Trent Alexander-Arnold for example. The problem with Trent was never his decision to move to Real Madrid. The problem was how he chose to go about it. From dodging the questions in public to giving shady answers, learning Spanish, all the while knowing in his last season at the club that the move was bound to happen. This isn't to say he won't have received a... What's the use of a contract if no one wants to actually honour it? Then you go to worse issues like PSR and how teams like Chelsea have found a loophole in the system to continue beating it, while clubs like Aston Villa have to sell their best players just to be compliant. It's not just in England it's happening abroad too. Football is changing, but this isn't a good change. This is a type that makes you wonder where the game is going to be in a couple of years, or what rivalries might even exist then. One thing we do know is that in the Premier League this season, with Isak's move to Liverpool now, the strikers' domino chain in England is insane. Click the next video to find out the centre forwards that will make the battle of the strikers in the Premier League go crazy.